Good evening. I'm Erin Boucher, Chairperson of the Shrewsbury School Committee. Welcome to our meeting for Wednesday, November 19th. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast live on Selco channels 29 and 329 and streamed live on Shrewsbury Media Connection's website. Thank you to Liz Poblowski and Shrewsbury Media Connection for their assistance with this broadcast. Tonight's meeting will also be rebroadcast on SMC's website and their YouTube channel between now and our next scheduled meeting. The first item on the agenda is public participation. Tonight we have not received any requests to speak at public participation. Public participation is available to all residents who would like to address the committee regarding concerns of policy, budget, and the performance of the superintendent. In the future, if anyone wishes to speak at public participation, they should contact the chairperson in advance of our next scheduled school committee meeting. The next item on our agenda is chairperson and members' reports. Colleagues, anything to report this evening? No. Okay. And then the next item is superintendent's report. Dr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Ms. Boucher. I did want to congratulate the cast and crew of the high school fall play. They performed Clue last weekend. I had the chance to go view the show, and it was outstanding, from the acting to the production, the set, the lighting, everything involved. So congratulations to everyone involved with that production. Also wanted to mention today is National Education Support Professionals Day. This is a day every year where anyone who's a support staff member for schools is honored, from bus drivers to custodians, secretaries, other administrative support staff, our IT techs, cafeteria workers, extended school care, para-educators, and really any support role. As I communicated in my notice for the meeting this evening, we are just very fortunate to have such a strong support team here in our Shrewsbury Public School District, and we're very grateful for all the efforts they put in every day to serve our students and their families and their fellow staff members. So I want to recognize those folks this evening. That is superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Sawyer. The next item on our agenda is an update on the superintendent search. I will be presenting a few slides this evening on this. Okay, so we wanted to update the community on the superintendent search. We will be voting this evening to establish a superintendent search screening committee. I have appointed myself and Ms. Sandra Fritz to the school to serve as the two school committee members on this superintendent search committee. And if you'd like to go to the next slide. So we'd like to just run through a proposed timeline of the process. In November, we have sent out a request for proposal for a search consultant that has been issued. The search consultant will assist the screening committee with the search process. We will also establish the composition of the superintendent search screening committee, and we will send out a call for applications for membership on the committee. In December, we will be awarding the contract to the search consultant, and we will determine the members of the screening committee. We will also be soliciting feedback from stakeholders regarding the qualities that we'd like to see in the next superintendent. We're also planning to advertise the position and recruit candidates, and that will be done through the search consultant also in December. In January, the screening committee will be reviewing applications and selecting semifinalists, and the screening committee will interview the semifinalists. There will also be a determination of the finalists made, hopefully by the end of January. Until this finalist stage, just want to note that this process is confidential and remains confidential, as the people seeking this position may be working in other positions, and we would keep their applications to us confidential. The screening committee will be holding multiple evening and full-day Saturday meetings to accomplish this work through January. That's our anticipation. In February and March, each finalist would visit the district and meet with various stakeholder groups, so that way we can get community input. And then each finalist would be interviewed in public by the full school committee. Additional vetting of the finalists will be conducted by the search consultant, reference checks, etc. And we also anticipate potential site visits to the finalists' current districts. The school committee would then vote to offer a contract to the preferred finalist. And then in terms of the composition of the proposed screening committee, we will be 2 school committee members, myself and Ms. Fritz, 3 parents of current Shrewsbury Public School students, the Executive Director of Human Resources, Kelly Sadecki, 4 SPS staff members, the Executive Assistant to the Superintendent, and 1 principal and 1 assistant superintendent, for a total of 13 members on the committee. In terms of the applications for the screening committee, we have circulated draft communications to the members of the school committee regarding applying to be on the search committee in terms of parents and staff. And these communications to parents and staff have been reviewed by legal counsel. These communications will be issued to current SPS parents and staff respectively tomorrow. And the applications will be due on Monday, December 8th. Members appointed to the screening committee will be announced at the Thursday, December 18th school committee meeting. Just note that it is on a Thursday. We've moved it one day because of a special town meeting that's occurring on December 17th. To be considered, applicants must agree to maintaining confidentiality of the screening process and sign a non-disclosure agreement. And the applicants must commit to being available for all of these multiple evening and full-day Saturday meetings. So we just want to make the people aware that if they're interested, it would be a commitment during January and February of some evenings and weekends. And again, those dates have not yet been determined as we're waiting to get our consultant on board. So now I would like to just open it up to the committee. Does anyone have any comments, or Ms. Fritz?
Sure. I think, one of the main duties of a school committee member is the hiring of a superintendent, and I think that is probably one of our most important duties, to make sure that the district is run appropriately. And with Dr. Sawyer being here for so long, we have a good track record, but this is going to be a very important role for all of us to play as we move into this next superintendent and the full hiring process. I think it's a great It's laid out succinctly. We have dates. We know what we're looking forward to. But the most important piece for the community to understand is that we will have a screening committee, but there will also be ample opportunity for the entire community to provide feedback. We will definitely be holding visits with stakeholders once we get to the finalist stage. So everyone in the town will have the ability to have input and see the finalists that we are bringing forward from the screening committee and get their input. So to me, that's one of the most important things I want to have come out of here tonight, that it will be a community effort and a community input in this process.
Yeah, I appreciate the overview. I also appreciate having the experience of Ms. Fritz having served on the last screening committee, which right now I guess we're averaging once every 16 years that we do this, which is not the norm. But we're fortunate to be in that position. I think, as was stated, I think confidentiality very important throughout the process, not only for the applicants, but also for those that serve on the screening committee. Know that it is a commitment, as any subcommittee type is. And then certainly we want the community input. I think that's really important as part of this process. So thank you.
I also appreciate the amount of work that's gone into this so far. I think also with everything that we do, we usually get a good amount of families or parents that want to be part of some of the subcommittees that we create. And this is definitely something that if people have interest in, I would love for more people to apply. I mean, obviously we're only looking at a committee of 13, but this is a really important position that we're filling, and we certainly want feedback from all stakeholders, whether you're on the search committee or you come to different forums that we might have with finalists. But if anybody is interested in this, please reach out, because we really do want a good cross-section of what our community looks like. And this is a good opportunity to get involved if you don't really know where to get involved or where to start. This is a good starting point. So thank you for this, and we're looking forward to what transpires.
I think pretty much well covered. So.
Okay, right. So we do need a motion that the committee vote to approve the establishment of the Superintendent Search Screening Committee and communications for applying to be a member of this committee as presented.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a time-scheduled appointment with regard to the middle school improvement plans. This will be a presentation and a vote. Each Massachusetts public school must have a school council consisting of faculty, parents, and a community member who advise the principal on the development of a school improvement plan. This year, each school's school council has used the district's 23-27 strategic plan and the district's 25-26 strategic goals and action steps to determine which goals were most important to be emphasized across the grades 5 through 8 level, and to develop school-specific goals aligned with the district goal. An update on last year's plan was included in our materials, and we also received an enclosed plan for this school year's common goals across the middle schools, as well as unique goals for each school. And the middle school principals, Ms. Burek and Mr. Kelly, are here with us this evening, so thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, good evening, Dr. Sawyer, members of the school committee. We'd like to thank you for this opportunity to share where our middle schools are today, what we've learned from last year's improvement plan, how our students performed, and how we are addressing the ongoing learning gaps through these year's goals. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the strong teamwork behind the plans we're sharing tonight. Our school councils played a key role in helping us build and review these goals, and we are grateful for their partnership. We also would like to recognize the Sherwood and Oak staff, teachers, tutors, reading specialists, instructional aides, curriculum coordinators, whose daily work with students makes this progress possible. Their collaboration, professionalism, and steady commitment to students are at the core of our improvement efforts.
We appreciate being here tonight, and tonight's presentation will blend our shared goals with school-specific approaches that reflect the unique needs of grades 5 through 8.
So again, tonight we're going to talk about the last year's plan, what the key outcomes were in terms of literacy, math, belonging, how COVID-19 continues to impact the middle school performance of students, what we're doing this year to close those gaps, and of course, how this work all ties directly back to our district priorities.
Before we share an update on last year's plan, it's important to start with some context. Throughout COVID-19, while it's behind us, its academic and developmental impacts continue to show up most clearly at the middle level for 3 reasons. One, these students experienced the pandemic during foundational academic years. Current 5th and 6th graders were in early elementary school during school closures and hybrid learning. Number 2, gaps in decoding, fluency, writing stamina, and math foundations persist. And 3, social emotional development was interrupted during critical peer bonding years. This affects belonging, confidence, behavior, group work, and executive functioning.
And I think you're going to see this in our data tonight. While we have pockets of growth, and we're certainly excited about that, we also see increases in the number of students that require interventions, inconsistent gains in reading, ongoing work in foundational writing skills, and as Hallie just described, executive functioning. But what gives us confidence is that our actions directly match the needs we see, and the plan we present tonight reflects a focused, research-based response.
So our first major shared priority is educational excellence. Priority 2, to close gaps by strengthening literacy and foundational math skills. This work is central to ensuring that every student can access grade level content and experience meaningful academic growth. We're going to go back. We'll start kind of reviewing where we were last year.
All right. So as you'll see, last year, again, we committed to reducing the percentage of students qualifying for literacy and math interventions, as you know, by 10%. Both schools were able to complete all action steps, including strengthening Tier 1 instruction, expanding Tier 2 and Tier 3, increasing staffing for literacy, utilizing the STAR data to identify needs, and running multiple data cycles.
So the results at Oak were in ELA in the tier 2, we decreased, so grade 7 went from 15% of students receiving tier 2 interventions to 2% of students receiving tier 2 interventions. And in grade 8, it was 12% to 8%. And then in tier 3, we decreased, go back a second. We decreased tier 3, 4% to 2.5% overall. So our numbers did improve. We are very appreciative of the additional supports provided.
At Sherwood, and I first just want to thank Lisa Daly, Melissa McCann, and Sue Dorenzo, who helped me compile this data. As you can see here from the ELA interventions, interventions stayed at 8% in the fall of winter, rising to 14% in the spring for grade 5. For grade 6, interventions moved from 11 and then to 9 in the winter and then to 14 in the spring. I will start with a few bright spots. So improvement in foundational skills. In 6th grade, fewer students needed tier 3 support. That's, again, as an addition to our literacy, our reading specialist, Sue Dorenzo. More consistent EL routines, better pacing, fluency practice. Again, last year being year 1 of the EL curriculum, started to see teachers get a little bit more confident with those routines as the year went on. We've also gotten stronger at identifying systems through the STAR, CBM, and classroom data use. In case you're wondering why spring numbers increase, a lot of times this is due to the curriculum complexity between units 2 and 3, where there's more nonfiction, more multi-text work, which is generally a little bit tougher in terms of vocabulary for students. We also see variability in rigor across classrooms, as that can widen the gaps for students. In terms of next steps, we know that we need to continue to strengthen core EL routines, which we're doing this year in year 2. We know we need to increase progress monitoring in tier 2, which is happening in win block, morning routines, and independent reading. And we know we have to continue to keep routines tight to maximize instructional minutes throughout the school day. In terms of math interventions, as you'll see here from the data, grade 5, the intervention trends increased for grade 5 from 33% to 36%. So that's a slight increase in intervention need. If you're wondering why that was the case, when Melissa and I were looking at this, as math becomes more complex, some of those borderline students might be struggling to maintain proficiency, where proficiency stayed fairly steady, but more students need targeted support. And we're going to talk about some strategies we have in place this year to address that. For grade 6, fewer students required intervention in the spring, which is great. We saw stronger growth in proficiency during win time. And in terms of the patterns and things that we're going to be taking a look at this year, we recognize that for grade 5, strengthening those routines earlier in the year, whether it's through independent work, discourse, or explaining thinking, is an area that we're targeting this year. As I mentioned, we know we want to continue to target our win block, and we're also looking at how we can share practices across grade levels between grades 5 and 6. In terms of our STAR reading proficiency, the proficiency overall school-wide was at 64.8 in the fall. It jumped to 68.1 in the winter, which is great, and then it dropped back down in the spring of 64.4. So strong mid-year growth, a slight dip in the spring. I'll talk about that in a moment. For grade 5, in terms of a slight dip there, again, it's likely due to the increase in the complexity of the EL text, declines in reading stamina and motivations. I think if you ask our teachers that, they'll tell you that. Just something, again, that we're trying to work with our students on is that reading stamina and how they can continue to develop that, and the executive functioning of young learners at the grade 5 level. For grade 6, we definitely see more stability. A part of that comes with the maturity and familiarity with the EL curriculum. In terms of what we're going to look at this year, strengthening that tier 1 instruction, we know that that's the most important gain we can make. And again, our teachers are showing already some more confidence with their tier 1 instruction with the EL curriculum. We know we need to continue to build reading stamina. We're looking at how we can do that during morning arrival time, how we can look during other soft times. I'll also talk about an initiative we have in place this year to build that. And then we want to continue to keep our supports in place for MTSS.
I did. I went.
Okay.
I went too early,
That's
but
okay.
that we just kind of went over this data. So our interventions, we dropped from 19% to 6%. Grade 8, again, decreased. Tier 2 support showed consistent reductions across both grades. Tier 3 remained stable, but with fewer new additions. And we're continued to focus on early identification and exit readiness. I also would like to thank, we share Melissa McCann and Lisa Daly, so I also would like to thank them. Kristen Sayag is our regular education reading specialist, and Maura Hope-McGinnian, who's worked with students. And then really every ELA and math teacher who has really worked to kind of develop these intervention skills, which are not kind of part of their day-to-day necessarily 7th and 8th grade content. And then we have 2 special educators also, Ann Johnson and Lori Kruger, who are reading specialists. And we added a 3rd reading specialist this year with Nicole Robbins. So a lot of additional support for students. And our math interventions, so in grade 8, we had 114 students who participated. 76 of those students improved their scores, and 65 students had SGP growth of 50. And grade 7, 88 students participated, 64 students improved their scores, and 41 students had SGP of 50. So again, we're seeing some positive shift. Just skip through all of them. That's me.
Yep.
A lot of intervention. I have to flip. Sorry. So belonging is instrumental in middle school success, and it's often. Am I out of order?
No, you're good.
And it's often the most complicated time to establish the well-being. Plus, it's a very fast 2 years, right? 2 years at Sherwood, 2 years at Oak. So we committed, one of the goals was committed to raising the Panorama Belonging scores by 5% district-wide.
Troy, hold on, I'm in the wrong spot.
Okay.
There you go. Okay.
Do you want me to do? So some of the, do you want to share the Sherwood or do you want me to share the Sherwood? Okay, so at Sherwood, the Panorama Belonging, there was no change in the fall to the spring, but plus 2% from last year. So some of the family survey highlights at Sherwood were 92% feel their child is safe, 88% feel the experience was positive, 88% of families feel their child belongs, which is plus 9%, which is really significant. 98% of families say that their child feels connected to peers. The Oak results were not as strong. Our cultural awareness did dip. We had a big jump from last year or the previous year to last year. So we did go down 1% in cultural awareness, and we did go down 3% in belonging.
Apologize for jumping around just a little bit there. So in terms of educational excellence priority number 4, both schools had multiple STAR data meetings, expanded our intervention cycles, and used data to group support and exit students. Over the past 2 years, this has been a significant mindset shift for our staff. And I'd like to give our teachers and specialists and coordinators a lot of credit for that. They've truly embraced the data culture. I know initially they were a little bit nervous about that, but it's really been fun to watch the growth and collaboration that happens around the table during those data cycles, because teachers are excited to have the data in front of them and understand, how the power in using that effectively to support students. So it's been great to see that. So feel good about the system now that it's firmly in place, and we can continue to use this as a major accelerator in closing the gaps going forward.
No.
This is,
PBIS.
yeah. This is me, I think. Okay. So another area of focus for us was well-being with our students and staff. So as Hallie mentioned earlier, belonging and well-being are essential for learning, especially for students still rebuilding social emotional skills. This work is critical because students learn best when they feel safe, connected, and supported.
So across both schools, across the whole district, we focused on PBIS. So in both Oak and Sherwood, We have developed strong foundations with consistent expectations, increased SEL supports, so advisory lessons, morning meetings, and student voice opportunities. We've seen more family engagement through forums and community events, expanded clubs and activities that create connection for students. At Sherwood, there were significant increases on the family survey and safety, belonging, and peer connections. So these reflect the daily work of staff to build relationships and really the predictability of routines.
Okay. And then in terms of our school-specific goals directly supported the district's commitment to the enhanced well-being of students and staff. Both at Sherwood and Oak, we designed goals that reflected the unique needs of middle school learners, strengthening belonging, improving social-emotional skills, and ensuring students experience predictable, supportive environments. So at Sherwood, last year, our school-specific goal focused on the full implementation of the PBIS framework, supporting students' social, emotional, and behavioral success. Over the past year, we built every core component of the Tier 1 PBIS system, creating a school-wide behavior matrix and teaching clear expectations across all settings. We now have a consistent school-wide system for acknowledging positive behavior through blue tickets, recognizing leadership through yellow tickets, and celebrating students with predictable incentives, including attendance rewards and school-wide events. This year, we will strengthen that work even further by training all para-educators, which happened earlier in the year, expanding our attendance incentive system, and raising expectations for academic readiness. And I urge you, if anybody has a Sherwood Middle School student, ask them about Next Level November. They'll tell you exactly what I'm talking about. These additions have brought even greater alignment across classrooms and increased clarity for students about what it means to be respectful, responsible, and ready to learn every day.
So at Oak, we have career. So our goal was to expand and refine career explorations and opportunities for all Oak students. So a big thank you to Kathleen Culhane. We have completed all the action steps of the goal. We have added lunch and learns, so we've had 27 professionals come into Oak over the course of the year, which 555 students attended the lunch and learns and participated and learned from different careers. We've continued to expand that into this year. And again, it's very interesting to see the students gather around with their lunch, eager to learn about the different possibilities, and there's a wide range. Kathleen has also surveyed staff, or surveyed students and staff to offer different opportunities for what are students interested in, if we're not having a career available, is there certain things to reach out to. We've continued with the career day for 7th grade, which is always a really big success. And we also partnered we had Charles River Labs come in last year, and they did 2 full grade assemblies, and then they did a science experiment with each classroom. So they went into each classroom following the assembly and did a hands-on experiment, both 7th grade and 8th grade, which was, again, Pam Poitras organized the whole thing, and it was a really big undertaking to it's kind of like a joke, getting 50 scientists, 5 dogs on a bus to Oak Middle School. But it was a really successful day.
All right, so moving into this year, we're building on the tremendous work that we completed last year, and across both middle schools, we continue to strengthen our Tier 1 instruction and expand interventions, implement consistent PBIS expectations, and deepen SEL supports and connections both for students and family engagement.
We now have clearer systems, stronger routines, and a more unified data culture. This gives us a solid foundation to take the next steps, targeting the specific learning gaps that remain, raising expectations for academic readiness, and continuing to build a sense of belonging and well-being for every student.
Okay. I'm going to jump into our first goal. So the work that you see in front of us here is essential as it notes, as a result of literacy and the work that we started last year. We know that literacy is the foundation of every part of a student's learning in the middle grades. When students struggle with reading comprehension, vocabulary, or writing, it impacts not only the success of ELA, but math, science, and social studies. Fully implementing EL in year 2 now at Sherwood, strengthening Tier 1 instruction and using common assessments ensures that all students across both schools have consistent access to high-quality, research-based instruction. I think for me, I was in a pod meeting today with ELA teachers, and so now in year 2, they are comfortable with the materials that they're using, and they're starting to have some really deep level discussion around how they can take that learning and make it more engaging, more exciting for students. So it's really exciting to see that.
Our shared goals also help us close the lingering gaps we continue to see in our STAR and MCAS data, refining the EIT process, improving win-block practices or exploration practices, aligning interventions, and supporting English learners allow us to respond more quickly and more effectively to student needs. This consistency across grades 5 through 8 is really what accelerates growth.
Yeah, and I think the bottom line is strong literacy instruction, having a unified data-driven system both across 5 through 8, and starting to see that enthusiasm from teachers in terms of the power of using that data appropriately. We'll continue to close the gaps and prepare our students for high school and beyond. In terms of our next goal, goal 2.2 here, this continues to look at our reading assessment and closing the gaps and raising those scores by 10%. Again, we feel very confident by continuing these strong systems in place across 5 through 8. We also will be exploring some additional supports for win-block, both in ELA and math. And I know Hallie and I have had some discussions around how we can continue to provide some support, additional support to math teachers. We've had some success with the reading specialist, and I know we've had some wonders around whether there's additional supports we can ask for with math. But again, it's exciting to see the work that teachers are doing to continue to support students, and again, starting to really collaborate and share those ideas across grade levels to see how they can strengthen that time for students. In terms of priority number 2, enhanced well-being.
Sure. Our district's commitment to enhanced well-being recognizes that all students learn best when they feel safe, supported, and connected. Social, emotional, and behavioral health are essential foundations for academic success. So focusing on strengthening our SEL instruction and fully implementing the next phase of PBIS, which is really clear expectations, consistent routines, predictable responses, help students thrive and create a calmer, more productive classroom. This work also supports staff by giving them shared tools and language to manage behavior and build positive relationships. So strong PBIS and SEL systems elevate both student and staff well-being, which ultimately strengthens teaching and learning across all middle school classrooms.
Yeah, so I think, again, across both schools last year, we had all teachers trained in PBIS. I think one thing that was really a powerful moment for us was starting off the year with having the paras in that training as well. So to have at both schools, all teachers, all paras trained with PBS. So now you have all staff using that same language. And thinking about it, right, in 2 schools where you have almost 2,000 students, how important it is to having every single adult making sure they're using the same language to a student with regards to an expectation, with regards to a positive incentive. When you only have half of the adults doing that, and our support staff, quite honestly, are the most important because they're across different teams, they're throughout different parts of the building, and students see them. And again, I know we've seen it at Sherwood, and I know in talking with Hallie, you've seen it at Oak, just the impact that's having this year by having all adults saying that same message has made a huge improvement. And I haven't looked at the data yet, but I can just tell you, anecdotally, from not seeing as many students come down to the office during the day for behavioral discussions with our assistant principal is telling me that that's working. But I'm looking forward to seeing that data later on to support that. In addition, this year, we're also implementing, as you know from Dr. Lazat, the Wayfinder SEL curriculum through grades 5 through 8. We're also going to be updating our behavior tracking system, which I was just sort of alluding to, and increasing our communications with families so that they understand how PBIS works. I know when Hallie and I send out our weekly newsletters, you know, if we're having community meetings and we're providing incentives to students, we want to make sure parents understand what those are, and sharing that language with parents so that when their children's coming home, they can use that same language with their child. You know, ask them about the blue tickets or the yellow tickets, the next level November, so that, again, we're all sort of using that same language.
Students, and just a side note, that students and staff are really having a very positive response to Wayfinder. It's very enjoyable to walk around during our advisory. You see a lot of laughing and a lot of engagement, even for students who were less eager to engage last year with advisory.
All right, and then in terms of our school-specific goals for this year, again, these rely heavily on our 2024-25 MCAS results, STAR reports, and the feedback we received from both students, staff, and families. These data points made clear where our strengths are and where we need to go. So when looking at Sherwood's school plan for this year, before I share the rationale with regards to our school-long reading initiative, it's important to understand that this goal creates a steady, in our opinion, rhythm of joyful, community-centered reading experiences. As you'll see here, there's a variety to this. It engages students, staff, and families in reading all year long. You know, when I look at the spring family results over the last several years, what I often hear from families is we want to be more involved at Sherwood. We want to be more involved. We want to come in during the day. We want to come in at night. So obviously that is something that we've looked at year after year after year. We've run different events, fall socials, spring socials for students. We've had success with our food truck nights. We've also had success with our family culture night the last 3 years, trying to find different ways to bring in different types of families to that event. Another thing that obviously we've been looking at is how can we improve reading? How can we improve achievement? So Hillary Clegg and I met over the summer and said, I think there's an opportunity here to kind of partner those two things, and talked about how we can make that work. So our MCAS and STAR data shows that literacy growth is happening, but certainly not at the rate we need to close our gaps. We continue to see needs in comprehension, vocabulary, fluency, writing stamina, especially for students whose reading development was disrupted during the pandemic. At the same time, as I just mentioned, our belonging and family feedback data tells us that connection and engagement are major strengths at Sherwood and powerful levers to accelerate learning. So this plan builds directly on the systems we strengthened last year, and allows us to deepen daily reading, increase authentic writing, and expand high engagement literacy experiences. So I won't go through all the plans for this, but just to highlight a couple of things, we did have a family reading night back in October. We had over 200 students show up for that, which was great, along with their parents. We also had the Shrewsbury Public Library show up for that event, along with Officer Zona and TJ Kelly and the Comfort Dog Blue, which was nice. Jane Lazat was gracious to reach out to the high school, and we had some musicians playing, along with members of the art club, thanks to Pamela Blank, and it was a great night for our community. But we have a few other events planned throughout the year. We're hoping to bring Read Cross America Week. I know they do that at the elementary schools, but we're looking to bring that to Sherwood in March. And then we'll continue on with our very successful Book Madness tournament in March and April that gets a lot of excitement from the kids. But we're really hoping just to continue that thread through the year.
The Oak-specific goal is to improve student writing performance by increasing writing frequency, strengthening clarity and structure, and building stamina across all content areas. So this is driven by our MCAS data, where our writing was our lowest strand at 49% proficiency. So the data told us that writing is the clearest need. MCAS and STAR data show gaps in idea development, organization, and elaboration. Research tells us the best way to improve writing is to write. across all disciplines. So frequent, quick writes, summarizers. This is our first year in the full implementation of EL, so there's clear routines and structures, but also looking for opportunities in other subjects, including PE and chorus, and in different areas where students can express themselves through writing. The Tier 1 structures in place, our EL is implemented, and we're also through instructional rounds, we're getting into classrooms more as a leadership team at Oak. And so again, looking for some of the school-wide routines to improve writing. And writing strengthens learning and belonging. So when students are writing regularly, they can think more deeply, they can communicate more clearly, and they can see their voices valued. So we are going to increase writing. The goal, the minimum is at least once per cycle to add some element, but I think our teachers are overachievers at Oak, and so I think they're gonna really take to this and be reflective. Integrate writing into all subjects, as I said, and provide some PD and common tools to support strong instruction. So this plan aligns with our data, our Tier 1 work, and the research. So more writing, more often, with clear expectations is what's really going to help students to grow.
And we just want to thank you for listening tonight. And again, we want to thank our entire staff. It's a true team effort, not only just in terms of preparing this report for us to deliver it, but also, as Hallie mentioned, our teachers, our tutors, our IAs, everyone, every day helping students to achieve success. So we'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you both for your presentation. So you both have one of my children in each one of your schools. So I paid a lot of attention to the middle school improvement plan, but I will say that going through this, I can see a lot of differences in both schools over the past couple of years, and that's anecdotally, but that's just, when I have, the one that's at Oak now, compared to a few years ago when she was at Sherwood, not a bad experience at all, but what has been done at Sherwood over the last few years, there's a noticeable difference as a parent, and I think also as a student, of what they're going to school and what they're experiencing. And some of that is the work that the staff is doing. Some of that is changing the books that the kids are reading. Hallie, I think you said it best, like writing is the best way to improve writing is writing, and the best way to improve reading is to read. So especially with Sherwood, I was really impressed with the action steps for the reading for the course of the year. For me, when I look at the EL material that's at both schools now, what we had a couple years ago at Sherwood, I'm sure was interesting to the students, but right now, so sixth grade just finished, or is working on Percy Jackson, completely different from, I think they started with Maru or something a couple years ago, which was interesting to the reader, but compared to Percy Jackson and the material and the projects that they're working on, vastly different. And that has triggered a student who, not a huge reader, to read. And if that's happening in my household, I'm sure that's happening across the board. And everything that we do to increase that reading, to, have students going down to the library, to, working with the librarians, to pick out a book. These are all things that are going to help the scores along the way. And then with Oak too, it's funny that we talk about writing because there has been a noticeable difference in the amount of writing that's happening versus just doing work on the iPad that's, checking the box, things like that. And actually, my 8th grader, coincidentally, a couple days ago said, I think I'm going to start journaling at night. And I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, for self-reflection, but it'll make me be a better writer. And I was like, that's great. That's great. But that came from school on reflect on your day. And it is, she's reflecting on the day, and that is a social emotional kind of like processing thing. But that's also having her write, because that's also, maybe it's the iPads, maybe it's because of COVID a little bit. Sometimes they're writing, it's not quite the way that we learn to do it, where you capitalize everything. They're doing it all on the computer. But when they're physically writing it, it's a little bit different. So I was really impressed with the work that's gone into both schools and what is coming out of it. I know that you're both working very, very hard. I know that your staff is working very hard, and it is coming through. And I look forward to seeing some of these changes that have been made, how that affects the students. I'm glad that we put resources at the middle level, because that's only gonna help. Even though we have, a lot of kids that are needing interventions, there are certainly students that need the interventions, with maybe English isn't their second language or whatever the case may be. But I think we're also getting better at identifying students. So there may have been students that a few years ago would have slipped through, I don't want to say slipped through the crack, but they would have been on the edge where you can continue on. Now we have better ways to identify students, get them right on the right track, and then they, maybe not need these interventions at some point. So, so anyway, that is all to say thank you. These are really good plans. I look forward to seeing what this does over the course of the year, but I think both schools are off to a really strong start with these improvement plans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and thank you, Rachel, because I think it's good for us, I don't have children in school anymore, to hear these, kind of real world, how things are changing, because we can look at the data, but hearing how it actually is applied and how it's working, because personally, I think these are the hardest years, 5, 6, 7, 8, as a parent as well, and just how kids are at these ages. So you've got a lot to do, and we do have these learning gaps that we're still dealing with. I'm really happy to hear that the staff is embracing the data. We just feel that data-driven is going to really provide the information to look at the gaps, look for the interventions, and also from a school committee perspective, it drives into the budget. If we have data that shows this is where we need to do better or add resources, it's just helpful for everyone. So I'm really glad to hear that, and not a question, but for you to think, because as we're moving into the next budget cycle, what are the biggest impediments, or what are the biggest areas of need that you may think of as we go into this next cycle to help you? Because you've got, I think, the 2 goals around the Sherwood goal as well as the Oak reading goal. These are great, but is there anything you need from a budgetary perspective to make these successful? So just if you can think about that as we move forward and let us know. But thank you,
Thank
really
you.
good work.
Yep. Thanks, Sandy.
The literacy resources were very helpful and noticeable, and really are
Good.
positively impacting students.
That's great.
Right.
Yeah, a lot to be proud of in the report that you shared. It's great to see the way we're identifying students that have those needs is a result of that embracing of the data culture that you described in your report. I think that's what kind of stands out to me, because we weren't always there. It's been but we've gotten there in a short amount of time.
Right.
And now everybody's on the same page, looking at the same data, making data-driven decisions, and sharing best practices on how we can move the needle, which I think is super important and not an easy thing to do when you're integrating new systems and driving compliance and change amongst the staff. And it is one of the toughest grades in terms of 5 through 8, certainly. I love the family and community engagement. I think that part is so important in building relationships with the village that drives our students, because it's not just what happens in the classroom, it's also outside. And I'm always seeing some great promotion of some community engagement events. PTOs do a really good job around the food truck events, and just getting families together, I think, is so important. I also love the advancements around career and technical education, especially starting at the early middle school age. I think that's great. In terms of closing the gaps, definitely add to what Ms. Fritz said in terms of, looking ahead to the next budget cycle. Where do you think additional supports might help mitigate where we're seeing some challenges, especially around where you said that complexity and rigor ramp up in the spring? Like, are there ways that we could maybe look at resources to kind of, move the needle, in the direction that we needed to there? But I think, some great results, especially at Oak Middle School. I mean, just seeing some really good results. And I think, John, you and I were talking at one of the leadership meetings, and you mentioned it here. about how tough it is to have that 2-year cycle in each school, because before you know it,
Right.
you're starting to build that rapport with the students, and then they're off.
Right.
Whether it's to Oak or to
Yep.
or the high school, you know. So that's a challenge. I know when I was going through this system, it was 5, 6, and 7 in the middle school, and now just based on how we're set up, it does pose the challenge. And I think the writing gaps thing, I mean, I just know from my own perspective. I did keep a journal in 8th grade. I still have it. And it was a lot of writing, but now everything I do is electronic. And it's painful for me, like, to switch to, like, a, notebook and a pen. Like, I can't do it because it's just, for me, it's, just not efficient. But I can see how that would be a challenge, especially where we're getting students to engage with technology that's very helpful, So, but yeah, great report. Thank you so much.
Thank you. John.
Thank you.
Mr. Valley-Wood?
Yeah, same. I echo my colleagues' sentiments. So it's great progress. I think we're seeing a good improvement across the board. I think Desi recognizing the Oak Middle School is one of the success stories that we can definitely highlight. But so I also see that you're continuing the same programs so that we are sustaining them rather than moving on. Okay, we achieved, move on.
Sure.
So I like how you put them into continue into this year, so that they're more sustained, more long-term, impactful for the students and for the teachers. So that's a great thing. One other thing so maybe I don't have kids now in middle school, but when you say writing and reading and writing, are they doing it on the screen, or is it mostly holding a book and holding a pen and pencil, paper?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I can talk at Sherwood. We really have made a push this year to be very thoughtful around how students are learning. One of the advantages of the EL curriculum is that they have actual books in their hand. They have actual workbooks that follow a very methodical sequence. So not only, the student is actually writing with a pen, reading a book, you just can't replace that. And I was just at a conference last week with some other principals and just talking about we're really still building up stamina for students with reading and writing and sustaining and keeping them focused. I know that that's, probably ongoing work for the district to think about, like, how do we balance screen time and, and how does that help, or how does it maybe hinder learning? But we've been very intentional. So during morning arrival, students, one of the choices they have is reading. And so, you're gonna see most students reading a book. For some students, maybe there's an access issue, and so we're gonna obviously allow them to use Sora and use the iPad. But we're really trying to be more intentional around reading and writing. Now with MCAS, you have to type on the computer, so we want to make sure we're setting up students for success. We have been also weaving in, and this isn't mentioned in the report, but we have been weaving in practice MCAS tests at morning arrival, at some soft times, because again, we recognize that's an area that we want to improve. So just trying to be thoughtful about it. We don't want students on the screen all day long.
Right.
But if there's a 10-minute window of opportunity to help them, improve their skills, we certainly want to try to do that. So,
No, wonderful. I think that's
Yeah.
a good point. I think
Yeah.
that's where the data can cut both ways. So
Sure.
we don't want to get too much into data, saying following the data
Yeah,
and
yeah.
driven by the data. But it's good with that we want to guide by the data, but also the ground reality also should support that.
Of course.
So reading a book, have them by actual book, physical book, and then writing in a paper.
Right.
So that we can also skip the AI
Sure.
scare.
Yeah.
At Oak, we are fully implemented with EL this year, so I think students really do enjoy having a book in their hand and writing on the workbook. I feel like more so last year and this year, students are asking for paper copies, or being offered paper copies, or working not just in their English classes with pencil and paper, but in other classes. And then we've hired a wonderful librarian, PJ Feynman, who's really made the library a very happening place, and has developed a really nice partnership with the new librarian at Shrewsbury Public Library, and so they've been over to Oak a few times. They were filling out cards, or they could re-up their library card, which was kind of a nice partnership. So I think there's over 30 kids who didn't have a library card before now that has a library card. But again, kind of just that promoting writing a card, or writing cards to veterans, or just simple ways of, and that's a dying art also, right? To be able to write a card, or to be able to address an email and not put, right, dear whoever, yes, so.
So, yeah, thanks. My one last comment, or question or comment is like, so I know you opened the session by saying all these kids are from pandemic, COVID era, mostly remote, and then they lost all the touch or being in a team and all those things. So how confident are we that by them moving out of middle school, they'll be back to normal pre-pandemic?
I think we're seeing huge strides. I think some of the pre-pandemic comments are just some of the foundational skills, like some of the literacy or the phonics. When it was being taught, teachers were wearing a mask, so you can't see just some of like the sounds or that kind of piece, or some of the basic. One of the goals that my school council and I discussed is kind of a working group goal. And while it didn't make it into the improvement plan, it is something that we're discussing as a leadership team, and how can we help students work in groups, and what does that look like for not only the social skills, right, that you need to kind of navigate a group, but also getting your voice right heard, and how do you participate, and how do you kind of navigate all those things? So I think that's something that we're seeing that is a need to work on. But I do think that we're seeing kind of really, really strong growth, and kids that are needing these interventions for whatever the intervention is, or kind of some are just dipping into the intervention, getting kind of a little stronger, and then going right back out into the tier 1 setting, so the general class setting.
Wonderful. I think thanks for the great work both Sherwood and Oak is doing, and then kudos to all the teachers that are being part of it. I think, yes, I think now being to the next year, I think it's much more comfort level, much more dedicated, like much more ease the teachers will go into, and the support staff will get into the programs, and then we may achieve the good outcomes, hopefully by the end of this middle school year, if not sooner. But thank you. Thanks for all the great work, and for the leadership, your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you both for the report this evening. I really think the consistency that you're establishing between 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th is going to pay huge dividends. Not that it wasn't consistent before, but just I feel like your partnership, the two of you working together so closely, it's so valuable, because you're creating an experience for the kids that's so seamless that when they make the transition, that they'll be comfortable with the materials, and they'll kind of know the routines and so forth. I also wanted to just highlight, I think that the communications with parents are, especially like around PBIS and the literacy curriculum, how important that is. And I'm very happy to hear that you're trying to bring some of that language that you're trying to impart at school to the home, because I think that's also just will reap benefits. And I just wanted to commend you both on your goals for this year. I think the literacy plan for the year long, of all the different events at Sherwood is just, it's not only are you striking, getting families to really focus on literacy, but just also the belonging piece, right? I think it's all kind of tied together. I think that's going to be very valuable. And I think also the writing at Oak, I mean, again, paper to pen, and also just to get them away from the iPads and move in that direction, and to hear, some feedback from a parent with children in those schools, really valuable. So thank you both, and thank you to your staffs. I know this is a lot of work, and just very happy to see it moving in such a positive direction. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Dr. Sawyer?
Thank you. I want to thank Mr. Kelly and Ms. Burak for the report, and for the work they and their staff have been doing to support this, as well as families supporting their children's learning. There's no question, it certainly was mentioned, that the middle school age is a really challenging stage of a young person's development, and one of the real benefits we have, one of the challenges we talked about is the 2-year cycle in each school. One of the benefits that we've realized over time of having that model is that our students in 5th and 6th grade or feel a little more empowered and exhibit more leadership than they probably would like in a 5-8 middle school. And so we've tried to take advantage of that. I know Mr. Kelly's worked hard at that. At the same time of being a challenging time when kids are going through puberty, it's really, there's a real opportunity to engage kids and harness that energy that they have. And that's something that, as experts in middle level education, Ms. Burek and Mr. Kelly, are really continuing to try to find ways to do that. I think certainly the visits that our leadership team has had this year to both middle schools, seeing that level of engagement, the level of enthusiasm, that focus on joyful learning that was mentioned, I think that's really key. And really do want to commend around that literacy focus at Sherwood. And I think also, being very focused on both, areas of need that are seen in terms of where kids' learning's at, or their social emotional growth, for the various reasons stated, but also seeing, celebrating where we are seeing success, but not resting on those laurels either. And I think, for Oak, which was, one of a handful of schools across the state that was a school of recognition from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education for their levels of improvement in their MCAS testing, yet, focusing on data where we can get better, and that the writing goal is coming out for Oak. So I think that's particularly, a good focus that both schools have in terms of how we can move the needle. Because I think, that combination of raising expectations for our students at this age, but also supporting our students in getting there through the What I Need or Win blocks, through different interventions that we have, that real focus on the tiered system of interventions and supports. That's something that has been strengthened a lot over the last few years at our middle level, and I commend both of our principals and their teams for the way that they've been able to do that. Their engagement with Ms. Clowder in particular around implementing instructional rounds, the new literacy curriculum, focusing on data and those interventions. I think we're doing the right work, and I'm very optimistic that we're going to see some really strong gains in learning, both that are demonstrated through the academic piece, but also just by the level of engagement, the level of satisfaction kids have and their families have, frankly, with their experience. And the feedback we get from families is very positive about kids' experiences at both of these middle schools, again, at an age that's particularly challenging. So want to thank everyone involved at Sherwood and Oak for that work, and looking forward to seeing how this continues to go over this year. And I think when this, I won't be sitting in this seat next year when this report is made, but I'm very confident we're going to see some more evidence of real improvement in ways that serve kids well. So thank you very much to both of you and to your staffs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
We need to take a vote. That the committee vote to approve the school improvement plans for Sherwood Middle School and Oak Middle School. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
The next item on our agenda is an annual enrollment projection for future school years report. Mr. Girardi will provide information regarding enrollment projections for the district's student population in future years. The report includes information on historical and projected enrollment from the New England School Development Council, the Shrewsbury Town Manager's Office, the McKibben Report, a one-time report conducted in March of 2022 as part of the pre-K to 12 capital investment and assessment study. Thank you, Mr. Girardi.
Thank you. Good evening. All right, so we're going to discuss enrollment projections this evening. We are at the point, it may be difficult to believe for some, that we're starting, or we've been working on our budget for next school year, for 2026-2027. One of the key components of that is making sure that we're making a pretty solid projection on what our enrollment is going to be for next school year. Some key ideas here. Enrollment projections provide a trusted source of information for short and long-term planning. As for short-term projections, they provide data for annual class size and staffing decisions. And for the long-term projections, they provide data for capital planning decisions. A good example of that is the Shrewsbury High School, with the potential renovation addition to that school building, but as well as just looking at how we can best serve our students over the course of the next 5-10 years with the right resources. So different sources that we use for our enrollment projections. Back in March of 2022, we had a demographer, the McKibben demographing group. They did a report, which was part of our pre-K to 12 capital investment and assessment study. This was a one-time report, and it was an in-depth projection based on a cohort component method. Forecast future population based on the survival of the existing population and the births that will occur. Then there's two that we have done annually. So on October 1st, we got our October 1 numbers that we submit to the state of Massachusetts Department of Education. And once we do that, we also send them along to NESDEC, the New England School Development Council, and we pass them along to the town manager's office. And each of them provide a enrollment projection. NESDEC is conducted annually, and that's through our membership with them. It's a 3-year cohort survival method for grades 1 through 12, and a 3-year ratio for birth to kindergarten. The town manager's report, it's also a standard cohort survival method using a 4-year average for each cohort survival ratio. So when we get our actual numbers on October 1st, what we do is we take the town manager projection and NESDEC's projection from last year that we use to make our enrollment projection for this current school year. So we take the actuals and we then can compare them to what they projected to see what level of accuracy those projections provide. At the bottom of this chart, you can see that the accuracy is pretty strong on the overall cohort of grades K through 12. They do provide some preschool information, but that number tends to be pretty standard, and it's not a part of what we're projecting for grade level class size information. So again, the accuracy, town manager was 99.93% accurate with a variance of 4 students. They were shy 4 students. And the NESDEC, they were just over by 31 students at 100.55%. So they both provide pretty accurate data in the total, but what we're then able to do is start to drill down to grade level. And this really helps us understand how those enrollment projections are made, but how it happens in real life and what happens at each grade level. And this gives us another data point for us to take a look at. And what we see when we start to drill down to the grade level is that they're pretty accurate at the upper levels, at the high school level and the middle school levels. Where there's greater discrepancies is at the earlier levels, grades kindergarten, grade 1, and grade 2. As I'll show in a few slides from now, we're starting to go through the birth years that occurred during COVID, and they tend to be a little bit more less consistent than they typically are. And so town manager, NESDEC, they're making projections based on some numbers that are different than what they're used to seeing. We anticipated that the numbers that we got from them, we thought that they were a little low. And we actually, when we made our projection for this year, we came in higher, a little bit closer to what our October 1st actual enrollment is. So these are things that we take into account when we are making our projections. We really value these projections, but there's some nuance there that we also are able to make some judgments on based on what we think is going to happen. And then we can take a look at the projections versus the actuals by grade span. And what this allows us to do is understand our class size and the number of sections, and if how close we are as far as what we need for classrooms at the elementary level, how many sections we'll have at the middle and high school level. And again, when you look at the grade span, they tend to be pretty accurate. And again, the blue is the town manager number, the red is the NESDEC number, and the green is our October 1st actuals. And then taking a look at Shrewsbury High School, the 10-year enrollment, as we are embarking on the feasibility study, and we did receive the MSBA certified enrollment, the enrollment certification of 1,940 students. What we take a look at is how our town manager and NESDEC projections push out into those years. And they're actually pretty consistent. The MSBA certified number was 1,940 students, but their 10-year baseline average, which is more consistent with the work that the town manager and NESDEC does, their baseline average was 1,733 students. And that's pretty consistent with the numbers that we're seeing from the town manager and NESDEC pushing out into those years. Where the change happens is MSBA digs deeper and they do more work around projecting in out years with different factors. So they do their enrollment history trends and projections, much like the town manager and NESDEC does. But then they factor in new housing projects that are currently in the pipeline. They factor in their independent population growth forecasts that they do, such as the number of students that will stay in town because the high school is newer, for example. And then they look at specific space needs for educational programs. So again, their baseline number is pretty consistent with the numbers that we're seeing from the town manager and NESDEC, which is confirming for us. And then the increase in their projection then shows where the potential growth could come from. And we've shown this slide before, but again, just to show the 1,940 students, that is the design enrollment from MSBA, where we have the contemporary design capacity at 1,250 students, the original design capacity at 1,475 students. If we look at what they're showing for their 10-year design enrollment versus what the current high school capacity has, we're looking at a difference of 690 students, which is a significant number of students from what we currently have to what MSBA says that we should, that they would be willing to build a building this size for. So to go from the high school, I'm going to shift to the other end of the spectrum, which is our birth and cohort survival. The way that this is the town manager's model here. What they look at is the incoming cohort was born in 2021. That's our 2026 incoming kindergarten class. There were 343 births that year. They take a 4-year average of the births to kindergarten ratio from previous years, and that gives us a ratio number of 1.166. Multiplying that times the 343 births, that tells the town manager's office that they're going to make a projection for 400 students coming into kindergarten next year. And when we looked at NESDEC, they had the same number, 400 students coming into kindergarten next year. So again, when there's some similarities there, that gives us some confidence in how we're going to make projections for next school year. And then it also shows how that we use that same birth to K ratio to do some planning for from future years. So when we see the 10-year projections, this is how they get those numbers for students that currently are not in school yet. Our vocational enrollment. So in 2021, there was a change in admissions policy for Assabet, which was where the majority of our vocational students were attending. Over the next 5 years or 4 years, we saw that number reduce dramatically as we were no longer getting students into grade 9 at Assabet. The students that were there have been aging out over these years, and we were at a low last year of 22 students attending vocational programs. That orange line should shift over into the middle of 24-25 because we did start sending students to Leicester when we began a partnership with them back in January. And that number now is increasing due to our partnership with Leicester. And this next slide shows how that may project out over time if the number of students that we could send to Leicester do go to Leicester. So again, in this current year, we have 33 students attending a vocational program. What this graph shows is students aging out plus the students that would be accepted into Leicester High School over the next 3 years through 2028, 2029. So these numbers could get us to similar levels that we were at back in 2020, 2021. So to look at some long-term planning, we took a look at the high school, but this is K through 12 long-term projections. The actuals is the blue all the way to the left as of October 1st, 2025. K through 12, we had 5,688 students. It shows next to, in the 25-26 bar, it shows the town manager projection for this year, it shows the NESDEC projection for this year, and it shows the McKibben report projection. The next few years, what it shows is that there's pretty relative stability with the total enrollment numbers through 2035 to 2036, the 10-year push out. We only have the NESDEC. NESDEC does the full 10 years, but the town manager goes out to 2032, 2033. And again, that shows stability, relative stability with enrollment through these different projections. You know, if we look at some of our neighboring communities where their enrollment numbers are going down, we're looking at communities who are considering closing schools and trying to figure out how best to manage their declining population. There's nothing that indicates that Shrewsbury is going to have a declining population to any significant amount. So just to summarize, our short-term enrollment projections, they offer data to make accurate budget-related decisions around class size and staffing. That's the work that we're going to be doing over the next couple of months, is to take the reports from NESDEC and the town manager to look at our current enrollment, look at some trends that we've seen over time, and to come with our projections for 2026, 2027. We'll keep looking at the birth numbers. They were low in 2020 and 2022, and the population trends at the state and national levels to understand these potential downstream impacts on future enrollments. We'll take into account real-time adjustments that are not captured in these mathematical enrollment projections. You know, we had our emergency shelter population at an all-time high 2 years ago at 54 students. It is not that number now. So those are things we need to take into account. We've come to stabilize, understand the students that are going to St. John's as early as 7th and 8th grade now. The evolution of vocational access with the loss of seats at Assabet paired with the increase of seats at Leicester. The Leicester chart showed that we could have, you know, upwards of 100 students attending Leicester High School within the next 4 years. What impact will that have on enrollment numbers at the high school? And then the long-term enrollment projections that provide the data for capital planning purposes, that project enrollment trends over time, and that keeps pace with physical space needs and the evolving mandates for educating our students. Okay, with that, I'll happily take any questions or comments.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Girardi, for the report. It's very helpful as we begin budget season, and we can start working, you know, to kind of figure out how many sections of different classes we're going to need. Appreciate all the work that goes into this. Dr. Sawyer?
I also want to thank Mr. Girardi, you know, the town manager's office, our partners at NESDEC. I think that the work that we do around capital planning, this is really important, valuable data, but certainly in the short-term budget planning around what we're looking at is particularly important. I was interested to see how there was a lot of alignment between the different mathematical models in terms of the long-term projection for the high school, but then you know, the much more robust work that MSBA does to look at housing startups and other things that they look at in terms of, and one of the things they adjusted for as well was, and one of the challenges that I think you see, especially with the birth rate and trying to predict kindergarten is kind of the funky numbers we had during the COVID years. And when those kind of amplify in out years, having to sort of make adjustments for that is something that I know MSBA looked at very carefully as well, so that you don't have an artificially low. And we saw the proof of that, right? I mean, they were predicting, 270 some odd kindergartners this year, and we got 346. We always have, we've had, consistent ratios over time to a degree, and they've stabilized a bit because of having full-day kindergarten. But certainly, families are still moving to Shrewsbury for when their kids are starting school because of the continued desirability of raising a family here and attending our public schools. And so I think that Mr. Girardi was wise not to go with that low projection last year. We have a higher birth rate the year that we're projecting for kindergarten next year. And then we have another lower on the next year. So trying to work through that the next couple of years will continue to be something. I know that he and Mr. Escalante opened the kindergarten enrollment even earlier last year than we typically do, so we could really start to get a handle on those numbers. That's something I think we'll continue to do, because I think that was helpful. But again, the data is really helpful, and appreciate all the work that went into the report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda this evening is to designate a person for school-based asbestos management. We need to take a vote on this. All public and private K-12 schools must assign a person responsible for overseeing the management of asbestos-containing material in school buildings. This responsible person is called the AHERA designated person. Mr. Joseph Sexton, Division Manager, Public Buildings, has attended the 8-hour asbestos coordinator LEA designated person course at the Institute for Environmental Education, and the school department recommends that the committee vote to appoint Mr. Sexton as the AHERA designated person for the Shrewsbury Public Schools. Does anybody have any questions or comments before we take this vote?
No.
I need a motion that the committee vote to appoint Mr. Joseph Sexton, the designated person for school-based asbestos management for all of the Shrewsbury Public Schools.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the superintendent's annual goals. Each year, the superintendent of schools presents performance goals to the school committee as part of the evaluation process. Consistent with the evaluation process mandated by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Dr. Sawyer will present his proposed goals for the school committee's review and approval this evening. Dr. Sawyer will retire from his position in June of 2026, and the proposed goals are informed by and reflect this. And Dr. Sawyer provided us a memo with these goals, so turn it over to you, Dr.
Thank you. One of the things I'm doing for the last time here, but appreciate the area now that we've completed the district goals for the year and some of the other work that we've had this fall to propose these goals that would occur through April before the next school committee election and when my annual evaluation takes place. So through April 2025, as far as the student learning goal, wanted to, it really is reflected in all three of the commitments we have in our strategic plan for educational excellence, enhanced well-being of all, and optimization of resources. It really comes out of the very exhaustive report that district management group performed for our district last year. And it's a continuation of that work, in essence, where they had strongly suggested doing a review of our student services, and which is primarily special education, but also can refer to other ways that we support students in different ways, especially students who may be struggling in some way, whether academically or socially and emotionally. And by continuing to work with an outside expert, and we are close to engaging an outside consultant to do this work, we're in the final stages of that, to provide some insight into what best practices are already in place, what ways we might consider improvement, looking for potential efficiencies in order to inform that work that our strategic plan is focused on during this 5-year period. The proposed goal is for me to ensure that we are able to engage an appropriate outside expert to help us with that, to convene and facilitate the team of district staff, certainly working closely with Ms. Belcito, Mr. Girardi, and others, to help them conduct that review and engage with the staff as appropriate to be able to do that and analyze our current practices to look for opportunities for improvement. And then, work with that consultant and district leaders and the staff project team to synthesize what those findings are and present them publicly later in the early spring in order to inform, again, the strategic work that the district's doing. So it seemed like the kind of larger picture project that will also drill down into specific opportunities to be able to help shepherd during this final year of my tenure here. And then the professional practice goal is directly related to that fact, where it will be essentially taking the steps that need to happen to facilitate a smooth and positive and supportive transition of the superintendent leadership for the district. So already obviously have an eye on how to make sure that the work that we are doing can be provided to whoever is in my seat starting in July. To provide, whether that's briefing materials, other ways to provide insights into what the work of the school district has been and is going to be coming as we work through the 5-year strategic plan, and the other elements having to do with what the areas of focus for the state and other conditions that always are evolving year to year. Certainly, once the process is done and the next superintendent is selected, to provide opportunities for meetings with that individual to discuss important topics, provide the aid for that superintendent's entry into the role, and then certainly to work with you as a school committee, work with the district leadership team, including principals, district level leaders, our employee association leaders, municipal leaders, to help provide a strong, orientation experience for the next person. And with the timeline to hopefully have someone identified and signed on board by the February-March timeframe, hopefully there'll be lots of opportunities before I'm finishing in June to have a strong handoff of the baton to whoever that person is. So, work that I'm looking forward to, and certainly I'm committed to helping make sure the transition is as smooth as possible. So. Felt that was an important way to focus my professional practice area during this, my final year. So those are the two goals I propose. Of course, I'm responsible for making sure all the goals in the district annual goals that were approved earlier this fall by you are implemented. And I know there'll be a lot of work that happens on those, and typically that's reported out in the fall. But I'm 100% committed to making sure that we do the best work we possibly can this year, and these are two areas of specific focus that I'd ask you to approve this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Sawyer. Any questions or comments?
Thank you. I really like the goal around the DMG report, because it's something we said it wasn't just one and done, that this is something that's a living and breathing document, and their recommendations, I think, are important, that we look for areas of efficiency and making sure that any, our student services are where they should be. So I thank you for that one. And again, it's a continuation of the work DMG started with us.
Anyone else?
Just a quick question for my education.
Sure.
So, what's the timeline that of immersion that it needs for a new person to be in? Like, how would it, what would be the total time? Like 3 months, an immersion program for a new hire?
Sure. So, I
To
mean,
speed.
typically, what would typically happen is that, and I know the target, I believe that the school committee will be looking at is for the next superintendent to officially assume their duties on July 1st. Depending on who that individual is, where they're currently working, oftentimes there are opportunities for that individual to come and spend, a number of days here in this district during the course of the spring while I'm still here. On occasion, you might find a situation where someone, might start earlier and there's overlap. That's not typical. Obviously, we don't know what the scenario is going to be, so we'll have to see what that looks like. But the idea is that I will have as many personal interactions as is reasonable with the next superintendent during the spring and as I wrap up through the month of June. and then to help them be as prepared as possible for when they start full-time on July 1st would be the general approach. Of course, I'll be happy to be on the other end of a phone call. If someone has a question after that, I'm not going to disappear. But in terms of, it's really setting the groundwork. And then, one of the real benefits, I think, of the timing of this is that, we have a very stable leadership team and a lot of people with a lot of experience in the district who will be able to provide ongoing support once that individual starts as well. So, but I'd say that that's likely going to be some of what that would look like over the course of the spring.
Thank you.
Anything further? No? Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Sawyer. We need to take a motion to approve the superintendent's goals for the 25-26 school year as presented.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We do have some minutes from November 5th. Our meeting on November 5th, we're enclosed. Does anyone have any changes or corrections? Okay.
Yep.
Those will be accepted as distributed. And then we do need to go into executive session this evening. Just So I will need a motion to adjourn into executive session. A, for the purpose of addressing General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements. Purpose 7, Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 22F and G, for the purpose of reviewing, approving, and/or releasing executive session minutes. B, for the purpose of addressing General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect of the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Purpose 3, the Shrewsbury Education Association, Units A and/or B, the Shrewsbury Paraprofessional Association, and/or the Cafeteria Workers Association. C, for the purpose of addressing General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, non-union clerical and support staff, and/or administrators. Purpose 2. D, for the purpose of addressing General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements, federal and Massachusetts student record laws. Purpose 7. And E, for the purpose of General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health, rather than professional competence of an individual, or to discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. Open meeting law complaint. Purpose 1, where deliberation in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and return to open session only for the purpose of adjourning for the evening. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
This requires a roll call vote. Ms. Fritz?
Aye.
Mr. Wensky?
Aye.
Mr. Riefenpour?
Aye.
Mr. Belligaputi?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Thank you and good night.